So when I was 4 years old, we was at a family's residence having a cookout, and they had this in-ground pool. It had a shallow end and a deep end, and I was in swimming in a shallow end, and when no one was looking, I decided that I was going to get out of the pool, but I was going to get out from the ladder on the deep end. So I made my way over towards where the deep end started, because the shallow end was shallow enough that I easily kept my head above the water. And there was this little ring around the pool that was the same level as the shallow end. So here I was, barely able to keep my head above water, determined I was going to get to the ladder, and I was just going to climb out. So I'm on my tiptoes, just slowly walking across this little bitty ledge that probably wasn't that wide. And in an instant, I slipped, and I fell clear to the bottom of the deep end. And I remember sitting there, and the only thing I could hear was I could hear the drain cycling the water through to the pump outside. Now see, at that age, 4 or 5 years old, I didn't know what death was. So I wasn't afraid of dying, but I kept thinking, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And all the while I'm looking around, and it's nothing but blue. And I didn't know what to do. The next thing I remember, I hear a thunderous splash, and someone fully dressed, cowboy boots and all, dove into the water, threw their arms around me, and pulled me up. And I remember getting to the top. I remember half a dozen people at the end of the ladder I was trying to get to. Everyone had their hands out, and they was just grabbing for me. And I mean, I remember just shooting out of that water like a cannon. And I remember hacking and coughing, and everybody wanted me to lay down because they didn't want me to fall down and get hurt. And I remember just coughing and coughing and coughing, and finally, after what had to have been several minutes, I began to take deep breaths, and with those deep breaths, my body began to relax a little, and even though I was a little shaken up. And I ended up being okay. But that day left a fear with me. It left me with a fear of water. Now, throughout my life, I've gotten in swimming pools and things like that, but even as a teenager and as an adult, I'd never go out in the deep end of a swimming pool. I was too afraid. Even getting in an above ground pool took time, and I had to get used to being in the water. And let alone getting in a boat or going on a lake or anything like that. That was a no-no. But I had a fear, a legitimate fear. I mean, I almost died. Had someone not dove in and got me, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I would not be here. And I've carried this fear for years and years, decades. Well, this past weekend, which was Father's Day weekend, I went with my kids, and ironically enough, some ex-in-laws, and we went out to northern Illinois, and we went to a lake. And while we were at this lake, we rented a cabin, and keeping with the mindset of 2017 for me and all the growth that I've done, I wanted to challenge myself. So the first thing I did was we went down to the dock. I went down with just me and my 3 sons. We went down, and I stood on the dock with my children, and my children asked if they could just simply put their feet in the water. Now, my children are old enough. They know responsibility-wise what to do. And I sat down with them. And I took my shoes off, I took my socks off, and I put my feet in the water. That, I can't tell you, that was scary. But I was determined to push myself. And my son's uncle has a boat, and him and his wife, my kids' aunt, they came out and rented a cabin next to us, and went out on the water. They said, "Hey, we're going to go out on the water. We'd like you and the boys to come." And I made a choice, and I said, "Okay." Now I climbed into that boat. I sat down in that seat, and the water was only about this far from me. I could have just barely reached over and touched it. I was nervous. I'm not going to lie, I was nervous. And when he fired up that V8 motor, and it was just sitting there, whoa, 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 and the water's bubbling around us, yeah, I was nervous. And when he backed away from that dock, and my safety was getting farther and farther away, yeah, I was nervous. Because that day of slipping in that pool, it was 6 inches in front of my face. Now we took off out of there, and when he throttled it up to take off, I think my heart went into my throat. And we're out there and we're jumping around the waves and stuff. And I mean, I'm at the back where the waves are being made from the motor, and I'm thinking, I got to do this. I've got to. I've got to. I've got to. And I did it. I got in that boat, and I was on that boat for several hours. And we took some of the kids tubing, and we had a good time. But I didn't stop there. When we found a cove that was safe in this lake, they stopped the boat, and they said, "Well, we're going to get out and swim for a little bit." And then my mindset said, "Another challenge, let's do it. Come on." My kids put their life jackets on, and they got out in the water. Their uncle got out in the water. I got up and I sat on the deck on the back of the boat. I put my feet in the water. We were probably 35, 40 feet deep. And I said, "I can do this." I got in the water. I swam in the lake where my feet, and I'm 5'11", my feet was probably at least 30 feet above the floor of that water. I was that boy now grown up in a bigger body of water. I did it. By the time it was all said and done, I'd been on the boat a couple hours. I'd gotten out in the water twice and spent a good amount of time in the water. I didn't get out because I was afraid. I got out just because I was tired of swimming. We went the whole length of the lake, which was a couple miles, and drove around and had a good time. Now, did it totally take away the fear that I had then? No. If I got out there right now, I couldn't just jump out into it again. But I pushed myself. And I tell you, when we finally docked for supper, when we were done, I felt accomplished. I did it. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. Whatever your fear may be, if it's something you really want to do, don't regret it years later. If you believe in here that it's possible, it is, man. It is so possible. Fears. Les Brown, a great motivational speaker, calls fear false evidence appearing real. And for 30 some years of my life, I thought that fear had me. Until this weekend when I went out and did this. When you push yourself past that fear, I guarantee that you're going to feel a reward. And it's going to be amazing. So whatever your fear is, I don't know you. If it's something you know that you're going to regret down the road, you owe it to yourself to try. I guarantee that you're not going to be upset. So I'm getting ready for a baseball game with my kids, so I'm going to get out of here, but I just wanted to share that. Don't let your fears hold you down, because sky's the limit. See ya.